Good morning everyone. Let us learn a few points about variables. Variables are nothing but attributes which can be changed and measured. It is a characteristic or property that varies in amount, kind and can be measured. Example, height, weight, mental abilities, personality, etc. In scientific research, variables are broadly defined as something that can be changed and measured as well. These variables can be mainly of two types, qualitative variables and quantitative variables. Qualitative means which can't be measured, and quantitative means there will be some quantity, means number, which can be measured. Coming to qualitative variables. Variables which can be composed into categories but cannot be ordered with respect to the magnitude. They can't be assigned any numerical values. Variables whose values vary by attributes or characteristics. The scales for measuring the qualitative variables is a set of unordinal, ordered or nominal categories. Therefore, they are not measurement variables. These values don't result from counting or measuring. They are called as categorical variables. Examples of qualitative variables can be race, sex, religion, occupation, personality types, eye colors, etc. Coming to second one, quantitative variables. Quantity means we will be having some number. These can be ordered with respect to magnitude and numerical values. They can be means numerical values or numbers can be assigned to these variables. They result from counting, measuring something. Precise and accurate measurements are possible, easily ordered in terms of increasing or decreasing order. The variables measured in numbers or digits, so they can be like IQ, age, height, weight, time, etc. Other classification of variables can be continuous and discrete. Continuous variables means age, height and weight, and discrete variables means by counting like members in the family or total number of students in a classroom, etc. And another one of the classification is extraneous variables and irrelevant variables. Extraneous variables are additional variables which have effect on the dependent variable, whereas irrelevant variables have no effect on dependent variables. Then coming to the major classification of variables, that is independent variables and dependent variables. Therefore, the variable is nothing but it is any factor, trait, condition that can exist in different forms. So, basically they are dependent and independent variables. First one, independent variables. Basically, again, these there are two types in this. One is type E, one type S. The variables which are directly controlled by the experimenter are called type E variables, and which are by selection are called as type S independent variables. So the independent variable, the whose effect is being studied, it is also called as predictor variable. Variable that can be manipulated by experimenter. And the meaning itself we can understand, it is independent, means it is not dependent and not influenced by any other factor or variable. So it is called as independent variable which influences the dependent variable. Coming to dependent variable. They are often qualitative variables, and these are commonly influenced by the independent variables, means the change we can see in dependent variable. So it is also called as outcome variable. So to be very clear, it is concluded that the independent variable or predictor variable commonly influences, affects or manipulates the dependent or outcome variable. Means here we can see some change in dependent variable. Examples can be increased study hours improves the academic performance. So here the increased study hours is called independent variable, whereas the increased performance means that is we can solve as qualitative. if we study for more hours, we will be having better results or first ranks. So that academic performance is called dependent variable. Other example can be increased nutritional status in pregnancy can have the better health of the baby after delivery. Here, the nutritional status in pregnancy is nothing but independent variable which will have effect on the baby's growth and development. That is, baby's development or the status of the health of the baby is dependent variable. Is it clear? The commonly used measures of dependent variables are accuracy, latency, speed, frequency and rate, objective test, etc. So this is about the main picture about the independent and dependent variable, which are for most important variables. The other types of variables can be confounding variable. These are unintended variables. It's a type of independent variable which is conceptually distinct but empirically inseparable from one or more independent variables. Example, the study of PG performance, whether the student attended private or public school, and the academic achievement. Here, even though we are studying about the performance of the PG students based on their public or private study, the academic achievement of the previous classes, means school age or high school, also influences the performance in the PG students. So, this previous achievement is called as confounding variable. It is, we will say, unintended because we are not studying about the effect of the previous performance. So, it is called unintended variable, nothing but confounding variable. Clear? Then coming to extraneous variable. Variable which is not there under investigation in an experiment, but it may potentially affect the outcome or influence the dependent variable and thus influences the results. Example, time of the experiment or testing, environmental conditions, humidity, then attitude or interest of the subject. All these may interfere with the subject and thus bring the changes in dependent variable. So though we are not studying about all these extraneous or extra factors, they also can influence the dependent variable. Clear? So this potential influence often requires that an extraneous variable should be controlled during the research to get accurate and valid results. For example, if the room is too hot, we can provide air conditioned room. So if the time is sun setting, so we can plan for, for that we need a light, means we can plan for the daytime when the light is plenty. So this is about extraneous variables, means additional which we are not studying also influences the experiment. So to have accurate results, researchers should have control against the extraneous variables. Otherwise, there will not be valid results in the experiment. Coming to mediator or intervening variables. They are also called as intermediary variables. Mediate means in middle. That is the meaning we have to remember. In statistical analysis, intermediary variable accounts for observable relation between two or other variables. These variables intervene between cause and effect. Example, will ability alone can excel the achievement, or will the ability alone can make the student to get the first rank? Here, we can say the ability alone cannot influence the performance. For example, a Telugu medium cannot score higher marks when he studies the English medium or English medium course or exams. But provided if the child has strong determination and self-efficacy that he can do well, then it may influence the result. So, this self-efficacy, self-confidence, okay, can be considered as intervening or mediator variable. So, it acts between the independent and dependent variables. So, that is called mediator. Then, moderator variable. Items and independent variables that changes nature of the relationship between the other variables. So, relationship between gender and statistics performance. Significant difference is noticed if the teaching style is changed. Here we can have the best example. The results will be very good if the students are provided with hand-on experience or practical methods of teaching rather than monotonous lecture method. So here the teaching style is considered as moderator. Moderate means which changes. So if you give the chance to the students to have the experience in the lab, then he can do well in the physics examination. So alone teaching method doesn't have a good effects, but in addition, if this style, teaching style method is changed with some other useful or aviates, we can say, okay, practical or aviate, these things may help the result of the student. So this is an example of moderator variable. Static group variables. Researchers may select participants from pre-existing groups whose identifying characteristics constitute independent variable or static group variables. They cannot be changed or manipulated by the experimenter, but these characteristics are used to identify the group membership. Examples of static group variables can be sex, age, weight, ethnicity, etc. There are three types of static group variables. They are organismic variables, which are physical characteristics of a person, either male or female, tall or short, obese or lean, etc. The status variables can be like educational status, occupational status, married or unmarried, and so on. The third one being attribute variables, that is personality traits, social behavior, diagnosis, etc. So the static group variables are already pre-existing or fixed groups like age or some age group or married women researcher can take, or well-educated graduates he can select as a group. So these are called as static group variables, which is a type of independent variables. Thank you one and all.